At 9:21 a.m. on January 21, 1945, the first British troops landed on Ramree Island, Burma. The island was 50 miles long, 20 miles wide, and covered mostly by mangrove swamps. The Japanese garrison numbered approximately 1,000 troops from the 121st Infantry Regiment, 54th Division. Their mission? Defend the island's 2 airfields. The British mission? Capture those airfields to support the invasion of mainland Burma. What followed would become one of the most horrific episodes of World War II. Not from combat, from nature. Ramree Island sits in the Bay of Bengal off Burma's western coast. The island is strategically important. Its airfields allowed control of the surrounding sea lanes. Whoever held Ramree could dominate the approaches to Rangoon. The Japanese had occupied the island since 1942. They'd built 2 airfields, defensive positions, and supply depots. They'd also learned to fear the swamps. The swamps covered approximately 900 square miles of the island's interior. Dense mangrove forests, knee-deep mud, brackish water, and saltwater crocodiles. Crocodilus porosus, the largest living reptile. Adult males reach 16 to 20 feet in length. Weight, 1,000 to 2,200 pounds. Bite force, 3,700 pounds per square inch, stronger than any other animal on Earth. These crocodiles inhabit coastal areas throughout Southeast Asia and northern Australia. Ramree Island's swamps held thousands of them. The Japanese garrison knew about the crocodiles. Soldiers had been attacked while on patrol. 2 men had been killed in 1943, 3 more in 1944. The garrison avoided the swamps. They stayed on high ground. They built elevated paths through necessary swamp areas. They posted warnings. The crocodiles were dangerous, but predictable. Don't enter deep water. Don't travel alone. Don't move at night. Follow these rules and survive. Break them and die. On January 21st, when British forces landed, the Japanese commander, Colonel Kenichi Nagasawa, assessed his situation. He had 1,000 troops. The British had 36,000, naval gunfire support, air superiority, artillery. The battle was hopeless. Fighting would accomplish nothing except Japanese deaths. Nagasawa had 3 options: surrender, fight to the death, or retreat. Japanese military culture prohibited surrender, death before dishonor. But Nagasawa was pragmatic. His men could serve the emperor better by escaping to fight elsewhere than by dying uselessly here. He chose retreat. The plan? Evacuate the island, move through the swamps to the southeastern coast, link up with Japanese forces on the mainland. Simple, survivable, except for the swamps. Nagasawa divided his force into groups of 50 to 100 men. Each group would take a different route through the swamps. This reduced the chance of British interception. If one group was destroyed, others might escape. The retreat began on February 6th, 2 weeks after the British landing. By then, British forces controlled most of the island. The Japanese were trapped in a shrinking perimeter. The only escape route was through the swamps. At 7:00 p.m. on February 6th, the first group of 87 Japanese soldiers entered the swamps on the northern edge of the island. They carried rifles, ammunition, minimal rations, and 1 canteen of water per man. The journey to the southeastern coast was approximately 10 miles through swamp. The soldiers estimated 3 to 4 days travel time. They didn't know that less than 10% would survive the journey. The swamps at night are terrifying, even without crocodiles. No visibility. The canopy blocks moonlight. Sounds are amplified. Every splash, every movement in the water, the mud sucks at your boots. You can't see where you're stepping. You might step on a snake, into deep water, onto a crocodile. You don't know until it's too late. The Japanese soldiers moved in single file. They used ropes to stay connected. The man in front carried a lamp, minimal light, just enough to see 5 feet ahead. They waded through water that varied from ankle deep to chest deep. The bottom was unstable. Mud, rotting vegetation, sharp roots. They moved slowly, maybe 1 mile per hour. Exhausting, terrifying, necessary. At 9:47 p.m., the first attack occurred. The rear guard soldier, Private Takeshi Yamamoto, screamed. The men ahead turned. Yamamoto was gone, just gone. The rope connecting him to the group was severed, cut clean. Something had taken him, fast, silent. The soldiers searched with their lamps. They saw ripples in the water, nothing else. Yamamoto had disappeared completely. The group continued. They had no choice. Stopping meant death from British patrols. Moving forward meant possible death from crocodiles. But possible death was better than certain death. They kept walking. At 11:23 p.m., another attack. This time they saw it. A crocodile. Massive, at least 18 feet long. It surged from the water and grabbed Private Koji Tanaka. Tanaka screamed. The crocodile pulled him underwater. Other soldiers fired their rifles at the water. Useless. The crocodile was gone. So was Tanaka. By dawn on February 7th, the first group had lost 14 men. They'd covered approximately 3 miles, 7 miles remaining. Morale was collapsing. The soldiers were exhausted, wet, cold despite the tropical heat, terrified. Some wanted to turn back. Officers wouldn't allow it. Going back meant British capture or execution. Forward was the only option. During daylight, crocodile attacks decreased. The reptiles are ambush predators. They prefer low light conditions. Dawn and dusk, night. During midday, they're less active. The Japanese soldiers used daylight hours to rest. They found patches of solid ground, small islands of dirt in the swamp. They posted sentries, tried to sleep, but sleep was nearly impossible. The environment was too hostile. Insects swarmed, mosquitoes, leeches. The soldiers were being eaten alive by parasites while trying to avoid being eaten by crocodiles. The second night, February 7th to 8th, was worse. The group encountered deeper water. In some areas, the water was over their heads. They had to swim. This was suicide. Crocodiles hunt swimming prey. The moment the Japanese soldiers entered deep water, attacks intensified. 5 men were taken in 2 hours. The survivors climbed onto a mudbank and refused to continue. Officers threatened them. Didn't matter. The men wouldn't move. They'd rather be shot by officers than eaten by crocodiles. At dawn on February 8th, the officers made a decision. The group would split. Those willing to continue would proceed. Those refusing would stay on the mudbank. 37 men chose to continue. 50 remained on the mudbank. The 37 pressed forward. The 50 waited for rescue that would never come. British patrols found the mudbank 3 days later. The 50 men were all dead. Not from combat, from dehydration, exposure, and crocodile attacks. Bodies were scattered, many partially consumed. The 37 who continued made better progress on February 8th. They covered 4 miles, only 2 more miles to the coast. They could see the end. They believed they'd survive. That night, February 8th to 9th, they camped on relatively solid ground. A rare raised area in the swamp, almost dry. They posted guards, built small fires to ward off crocodiles. Crocodiles supposedly fear fire. These crocodiles didn't. At 2:14 a.m., crocodiles attacked the camp. Multiple animals, at least 6, coordinated assault. This was unusual behavior. Crocodiles typically hunt alone, but when prey is abundant and vulnerable, they'll hunt in groups. The Japanese soldiers were both. Abundant, 37 men in one location. Vulnerable, exhausted, low on ammunition, unable to escape quickly. The attack lasted 11 minutes. Chaos, darkness, screaming, gunfire. Soldiers fired at shadows, at movement in the water. They hit crocodiles, wounded them. But wounded crocodiles are more dangerous, not less. Injured animals attack more aggressively. The soldiers ran, scattered into the swamp, away from the camp, away from the crocodiles, away from each other. By dawn on February 9th, the group of 37 had been reduced to 19. 18 men had died in the night attack. The survivors regrouped. They were close to the coast now. Maybe one more day, one more night. They could make it. They had to make it. On February 9th, they reached the edge of the swamp. They could see the coast, open ground, safety. But between them and safety was a final obstacle, a tidal channel, approximately 200 yards wide, deep water, swift current, and crocodiles, lots of crocodiles. The channel was a hunting ground. Crocodiles waited there for prey trying to cross. The Japanese soldiers had no choice. They had to cross or die in the swamp. They attempted the crossing at 4:00 p.m., high tide. The current was strongest, but they couldn't wait for low tide. That would be after dark. Crossing at night was certain death. They entered the water. They swam. The current pushed them downstream. Crocodiles attacked immediately. The soldiers fought. They stabbed with bayonets, fired pistols underwater. Some made it across, some didn't. When the survivors reached the far shore and counted, only 9 remained from the original 87, 10% survival rate. But they weren't safe yet. The southeastern coast of Ramree Island was still under British observation. The survivors had to evade British patrols and find transport to the mainland. 3 were captured by British forces on February 11th. 2 died from infected wounds on February 12th. 4 reached a small fishing village and commandeered a boat on February 13th. They sailed to the mainland. They survived. 4 men out of 87, 4.6% survival rate. This was one group. There were approximately 10 groups. Each followed different routes through the swamps. Each suffered similar casualties. Some groups fared better, some fared worse. The average survival rate across all groups was approximately 20%. Out of 1,000 Japanese soldiers who entered the swamps, approximately 800 died, most from crocodile attacks, some from disease, dehydration, and drowning. A few from British fire. British forces on Ramree Island heard the screams. Every night, from February 6th through February 19th, 13 nights of horror. Bruce Stanley Wright, a British naturalist serving as a soldier, later wrote, "That night was the most horrible that any member of the ML motor launch crews ever experienced. The scattered rifle shots in the pitch-black swamp, punctured by the screams of wounded men crushed in the jaws of huge reptiles, and the blurred, worrying sound of spinning crocodiles made a cacophony of hell that has rarely been duplicated on Earth. At dawn, the vultures arrived to clean up what the crocodiles had left." On the morning of February 10, 1945, British troops conducting reconnaissance along the edge of Ramree's swamps found evidence of what had happened during the night. Bodies, scattered across mudbanks and shallow water. Most were incomplete. Arms missing, legs severed, torsos torn open. The crocodiles had fed well. British soldiers counted 23 bodies in a 400-yard stretch. Medical officers examined the remains. Cause of death, massive trauma consistent with large animal attack. The teeth marks were unmistakable. Crocodiles. Lieutenant Colonel Harold Browning commanded the British forces in that sector. He'd heard the screams during the previous nights. He'd assumed the Japanese were fighting among themselves, or dying from disease. He hadn't imagined crocodiles. Now he understood. The Japanese hadn't been retreating through the swamps. They'd been dying in them. Browning wrote in his report, "The Japanese attempted to escape through 10 miles of mangrove swamp. Few survived. The crocodiles were waiting. But how many died?" This question remains controversial. British forces didn't witness most of the attacks. They heard screams, they found bodies. They captured survivors who told stories, but exact numbers? Unknown. The Guinness Book of World Records lists Ramree Island as the greatest disaster suffered from animals in a single incident. The record claims 900 Japanese soldiers were killed by crocodiles. But modern historians debate this number. Some say 900 is accurate. Some say it's exaggerated. Some say the truth is somewhere between 500 and 900. The debate centers on evidence. Primary sources are limited. British military reports from February 1945 mention Japanese casualties in the swamps, but they don't specify how many died from crocodiles versus disease, drowning, or British fire. Survivor testimony exists. Japanese soldiers who escaped told their stories, but their accounts vary. Some claim hundreds died. Some claim thousands. Memory is unreliable, especially traumatic memory. What's undisputed, hundreds of Japanese soldiers died in those swamps, and saltwater crocodiles were the primary cause. The exact number, 500, 700, 900, is less important than the fact that it happened. Men entered a swamp. Crocodiles killed them in large numbers. This is documented, verified, real. The crocodile attacks followed predictable patterns. Saltwater crocodiles are ambush predators. They wait submerged, only eyes and nostrils above water. They're nearly invisible. They watch prey approach. When the prey is close, within 10 to 15 feet, the crocodile explodes from the water. Speed, up to 18 mph for short bursts. They grab the prey with their jaws. Bite force crushes bones. Then they drag the prey underwater. Hold it down. The prey drowns. Then the crocodile feeds. But crocodiles can't chew. They can't tear meat into small pieces. Instead, they use a technique called the death roll. The crocodile bites a large piece of meat, an arm, a leg, a torso. Then it spins rapidly. The spinning motion tears the meat from the body. The crocodile swallows large chunks whole. If the prey is too big to swallow whole, the crocodile wedges the body under a log or in a cave, leaves it to decompose, returns later when the meat is softer, easier to consume. This explains why British troops found incomplete bodies. The crocodiles had fed, consumed what they could, left the rest. Some bodies were wedged under mangrove roots, decomposing. Others were half submerged in mud, partially eaten. The swamps became a graveyard, and the crocodiles were the undertakers. Japanese soldiers who survived described the attacks. Private Hiroshi Okamura, captured by British forces on February 12th, gave testimony. We heard them in the water, all around us, splashing, moving. We fired at the sounds. We hit some, but there were too many. They came at night. You couldn't see them. You just heard screams, men being taken, dragged away. We tried to help. We fired into the water. It didn't stop them. They kept coming. Okamura described the psychological impact. After the second night, some men went insane. They ran into the swamp, screaming. We couldn't stop them. They were eaten within minutes. Others refused to move. They sat in the mud, waiting to die. Officers tried to maintain discipline. It didn't work. You can't maintain discipline when crocodiles are eating your friends. The environmental conditions worsened the situation. The swamps were malarial. Mosquitoes carried Plasmodium falciparum, the deadliest malaria strain. Soldiers bitten on February 6th showed symptoms by February 10th. Fever, chills, delirium. Malaria weakened them, made them vulnerable, slower, less alert, easier prey for crocodiles. Some soldiers died from malaria before crocodiles could kill them. Others died from both. Malaria weakened them. Crocodiles finished them. Dehydration was another killer. The swamps were saltwater, brackish, undrinkable. The Japanese soldiers carried 1 canteen each, 16 ounces of water. In tropical heat, the human body needs 2 liters of water daily. The soldiers were consuming maybe 8 ounces per day. Rationing, trying to make the water last, but it wasn't enough. By the 3rd day, most were severely dehydrated. Cognitive function deteriorated. Judgment failed. Dehydrated soldiers made mistakes, walked into deep water, separated from their groups, became easy targets. On February 14th, British forces found a group of Japanese soldiers on a mudbank, 23 men, alive, surrounded by water, unable to move. They'd been trapped there for 6 days. They'd run out of food on February 10th, water on February 11th. They were drinking muddy swamp water, getting sicker, weaker. They couldn't swim to shore. Crocodiles waited in the water. They'd tried once. 2 men had entered the water. Both were taken by crocodiles within seconds. The others wouldn't try again. British troops called for a boat. They evacuated the 23 Japanese soldiers. All were dehydrated, malnourished. Several had malaria. 2 had infected wounds from crocodile attacks. They'd survived the bites, barely. The wounds were gangrenous. Doctors amputated 1 man's leg. Another lost an arm. The rest were treated and recovered. They were interrogated. They told their stories. Then they were sent to prisoner of war camps. From these interrogations, British intelligence assembled a picture of what happened. Approximately 1,000 Japanese soldiers had entered the swamps. They'd split into groups of 50 to 100. They'd attempted to cross to the southeastern coast. Most groups had been decimated, attacked by crocodiles, weakened by disease, lost to the swamps. British intelligence estimated 150-200 Japanese soldiers had successfully crossed. Of those, approximately 50 were captured. 100-150 escaped to the mainland. The rest, roughly 800, died in the swamps. How many died from crocodiles specifically? Impossible to determine. Some died from disease, some from drowning, some from exhaustion, some from British fire. But survivor testimony consistently mentioned crocodiles. Every survivor described crocodile attacks, multiple attacks, nightly attacks, attacks that killed dozens. If even half the deaths were from crocodiles, that's 400 men. If 3/4, that's 600 men. This estimate of 900 assumes nearly all deaths were crocodile-related. This might be high, but it's not impossible. Saltwater crocodiles are the most dangerous crocodilian species. They're responsible for more human deaths annually than all other crocodile species combined. In areas where humans and saltwater crocodiles coexist, attacks are common. Australia averages 1 to 2 fatal crocodile attacks per year. Southeast Asia, 5 to 10 per year. Most attacks occur in coastal swamps, exactly the environment of Ramree Island. But Ramree was different. This wasn't a few isolated attacks spread over months. This was hundreds of soldiers, concentrated in one area, moving through crocodile habitat for 2 weeks. They were prey, abundant, vulnerable, accessible. The crocodiles responded predictably. They hunted, they fed, they killed in numbers that would never be seen again. British naturalist Bruce Wright witnessed some of the attacks. He was aboard a patrol boat on February 12th. The boat was navigating a channel through the swamps. Wright saw Japanese soldiers on a mudbank. They were waving, calling for help. Wright's boat approached. Before they could reach the mudbank, crocodiles attacked. Wright described, the crocodiles appeared to emerge from everywhere. Dozens of them. They surged onto the mudbank. The Japanese soldiers tried to fight. They had no chance. We fired at the crocodiles, killed several, but there were too many. Within 3 minutes, all the Japanese soldiers were gone. Taken. The mud bank was empty. Just blood in the water. Wright counted at least 40 crocodiles in that attack. He estimated each was 12 to 18 feet long. He wrote, "I had never seen crocodiles hunt in groups. I had never seen them so aggressive. These animals were not afraid of humans. They were hunting humans, actively, deliberately. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed." Modern herpetologists, scientists who study reptiles, have analyzed Wright's account. They confirm that saltwater crocodiles can hunt in groups when prey is abundant. It's rare, but documented. In Australia's Territory, researchers have observed up to 20 crocodiles feeding on a single buffalo carcass. When food is plentiful, crocodiles tolerate each other's presence. They'll hunt cooperatively. This probably happened on Ramree Island. The Japanese soldiers represented abundant prey. The crocodiles responded by hunting in groups. The attacks continued through February 19th. By then, most Japanese soldiers had either escaped, been captured, or died. The swamps grew quiet. British forces swept the area. They found bodies, abandoned equipment, empty canteens, rifles, but few living Japanese soldiers. The battle for Ramree Island was over. The British had won, but nature had inflicted more casualties on the Japanese than British forces had. After the battle for Ramree Island ended on February 22, 1945, British forces conducted a full assessment of Japanese casualties. Official British military reports listed approximately 500 Japanese soldiers killed in action, but the reports didn't distinguish between combat deaths and other causes. Deaths from crocodile attacks, deaths from disease, deaths from drowning. Everything was classified as killed in action. This ambiguity created controversy that persists today. How many Japanese soldiers actually died from crocodile attacks? The question has no definitive answer. British military records are incomplete. Japanese records from the 121st Infantry Regiment were destroyed when the unit was disbanded after the war. Survivor testimony exists, but varies wildly. Some survivors claim they saw hundreds of men taken by crocodiles. Others claim dozens. Memory is unreliable, especially traumatic memory from 80 years ago. In 1968, the Guinness Book of World Records added an entry: "Greatest crocodile disaster in the world." The entry stated, "On the night of February 19th to 20th, 1945, 900 Japanese soldiers were killed by crocodiles in the mangrove swamps of Ramree Island, off the coast of Burma." This entry made Ramree Island famous. It entered popular culture. Books, documentaries, films. The story became legend. But was it accurate? Modern historians challenge the 900 number. Dr. Stephen G. Platt, a herpetologist who studied Ramree Island in 2006, argued the number was exaggerated. Platt examined British military reports, survivor accounts, and crocodile population estimates. His conclusion? Crocodiles certainly killed Japanese soldiers on Ramree Island, but 900 deaths is implausible. The actual number was probably 100 to 400. Still horrific, but not 900. Platt's argument rests on several points. First, crocodile population. Ramree Island's swamps could support maybe 200 to 300 adult saltwater crocodiles, not thousands. Each crocodile requires territory. They're territorial animals. They don't tolerate high population density. If 200 crocodiles existed on Ramree in 1945 and each killed 4 to 5 Japanese soldiers, that's 800 to 1,000 deaths. Possible, but unlikely. Most crocodiles wouldn't encounter Japanese soldiers. The soldiers followed specific routes. Most crocodiles were elsewhere. Second, crocodile behavior. Saltwater crocodiles are ambush predators. They wait for prey to come close. They don't actively hunt humans across miles of swamp. If Japanese soldiers avoided water, crocodiles couldn't attack them. Some soldiers stayed on dry ground, avoided deep water. These soldiers survived. The ones who died were those who entered water, either by choice or necessity. Platt estimates maybe 60% of the 1,000 Japanese soldiers entered water deep enough for crocodile attacks. That's 600 soldiers. If 50% of those were killed by crocodiles, that's 300 deaths, not 900. Third, alternative causes of death. Malaria killed soldiers. Dehydration killed soldiers. Drowning killed soldiers. Infected wounds killed soldiers. British fire killed soldiers. Not everything was crocodiles. Platt estimates crocodiles accounted for maybe 30–50% of total deaths. If 800 soldiers died in the swamps and 40% died from crocodiles, that's 320 deaths. Horrific, record-breaking, but not 900. Other historians defend the higher number. Dr. Richard Freeman, a zoologist who studied the incident in 2010, argued 900 was plausible. Freeman's argument: Ramree Island in 1945 was pristine habitat, undisturbed by human development. Crocodile populations were higher than today, much higher, and the Japanese soldiers weren't just passing through. They camped in the swamps for days. They were stationary prey. Crocodiles had time to find them, surround them, attack repeatedly. Under these conditions, 900 deaths is possible. Freeman also noted that British witnesses, soldiers who heard the screams, who saw the attacks, who found the bodies, consistently described massive casualties. Bruce Wright, the naturalist, estimated hundreds died. He saw attacks personally. He counted bodies. He had no reason to exaggerate. If Wright said hundreds, probably hundreds died. Maybe not 900, but maybe 600 to 700. Close enough to 900 that the Guinness estimate isn't wildly wrong. The debate will never be resolved. The evidence is limited. The witnesses are all dead. The Japanese survivors who could testify are dead. The last known survivor, Kiyoshi Tanaka, died in 2004 at age 87. He'd given interviews in the 1990s. He claimed he saw at least 200 men taken by crocodiles, maybe more. He couldn't be certain. It was dark, chaotic. Men were screaming, dying. I was trying to survive. I wasn't counting bodies. What's certain is this: Ramree Island was the deadliest crocodile incident in recorded history. Whether 300 died or 900 died, it's still the most. No other incident comes close. The second deadliest crocodile attack killed 40 people in India in 2007. The third deadliest killed 29 in Indonesia in 1975. Ramree Island killed at least 10 times more than any other incident. That's the record. That's why Guinness lists it. Not because 900 is proven, but because even the conservative estimates, 300 to 400, exceed every other incident by orders of magnitude. After British forces secured Ramree Island, they buried the bodies they found. Approximately 150 Japanese corpses were recovered from the swamps. All showed signs of crocodile attack: missing limbs, massive trauma, crushed skulls. The bodies were buried in mass graves on the island's eastern side. The graves were marked with simple wooden crosses, no names, just unknown Japanese soldier. In 1953, the Japanese government sent a delegation to Ramree Island to recover remains. They exhumed the mass graves, collected bones, cremated them, returned the ashes to Japan. The ashes were interred at Chitarigafuchi National Cemetery in Tokyo. A memorial service was held. Families attended. Many families never learned how their sons or husbands died. The Japanese government didn't publicize the crocodile attacks. Too shameful, too bizarre. Families were told their loved ones died in combat on Ramree Island. Technically true, but incomplete. The crocodile population on Ramree Island declined after 1945. British forces hunted them, killed hundreds. Revenge for the Japanese deaths? No. Crocodile hunting was commercial. Crocodile skin was valuable. British soldiers supplemented their income by hunting crocodiles and selling the skins. By 1950, the crocodile population had crashed. Maybe 50 to 100 remained. Conservation laws in the 1970s protected the species. Populations recovered slowly. Today, Ramree Island has approximately 150 to 200 saltwater crocodiles, less than in 1945, but still dangerous. Local villagers avoid the swamps. They know the history. In 1998, a British documentary crew visited Ramree Island. They interviewed local villagers. The villagers told stories passed down from their grandparents, stories about the screams, about finding Japanese bodies, about the crocodiles growing fat from eating soldiers. One elderly woman, age 76, said her grandfather had witnessed attacks. He told me the crocodiles were everywhere, dozens of them. They weren't afraid. They attacked anything that moved. My grandfather said it was like the crocodiles knew the Japanese were weak, vulnerable, easy prey. The documentary crew explored the swamps. They saw crocodiles, many crocodiles. The guide warned them, "Don't enter deep water. The crocodiles here are aggressive, more aggressive than elsewhere." My grandfather said they learned to hunt humans during the war. They remember, their descendants remember. This swamp is cursed. Is it cursed? No. But the crocodiles are definitely aggressive. Ramree Island has more crocodile attacks per year than comparable areas. Between 1998 and 2023, 12 people were killed by crocodiles on Ramree Island. All were villagers fishing or collecting firewood. Compared to other areas with similar crocodile populations, Ramree's attack rate is 3 to 4 times higher. Scientists don't know why. Maybe the crocodiles are more habituated to humans. Maybe the swamp's geography creates more human-crocodile encounters. Maybe it's coincidence. Or maybe the crocodiles did learn. Animal behaviorists have documented that crocodiles can learn from experience. They remember prey locations. They remember successful hunting strategies. If the 1945 attacks taught Ramree's crocodiles that humans are prey, that knowledge could be passed down. Not genetically, but culturally. Young crocodiles learn from adults. They observe hunting behavior. They imitate. If adult crocodiles in 1945 hunted humans successfully, they would have taught their young. Those young grew up hunting humans, taught their young, and so on. For 80 years. This is speculative, but plausible. The Ramree Island incident changed military doctrine. The British Army updated its survival training. Soldiers deployed to Southeast Asia received instruction on crocodile avoidance. Don't enter water at night. Don't swim in estuaries. Don't camp on mudbanks. Stay on high ground. Travel during daylight. These guidelines saved lives during subsequent campaigns in Malaya and Borneo. British casualties from crocodile attacks dropped from dozens per year in 1945 to 1 to 2 per year by 1950. The U.S. military studied the Ramree incident when planning Vietnam operations. American forces operating in the Mekong Delta faced similar hazards. Crocodiles, swamps, ambush predators. The Pentagon produced a training manual, Survival in Tropical Swamps. The manual referenced Ramree Island explicitly. In February 1945, hundreds of Japanese soldiers died from crocodile attacks on Ramree Island, Burma. This incident demonstrates the danger of moving through crocodile habitat without proper precautions. Modern Special Forces units still study Ramree Island. The U.S. Navy SEALs included in survival training. So do British Royal Marines, Australian SAS. The lesson isn't, don't go in swamps. Special Forces must operate in swamps. The lesson is, understand the environment, respect the predators, take precautions. These precautions have been effective. No modern military unit has suffered casualties from crocodile attacks since Ramree Island. In 2014, the Smithsonian Channel produced a documentary, Ramree Island, Nightmare in the Swamp. The documentary featured interviews with historians, herpetologists, and military analysts. They examined the evidence, debated the casualty numbers, interviewed descendants of survivors. The documentary concluded, between 300 and 900 Japanese soldiers died from crocodile attacks on Ramree Island in February 1945. The exact number will never be known, but the incident remains the deadliest crocodile attack in history. The documentary also explored why the incident isn't more famous. Why don't more people know about it? The answer? The story sounds unbelievable. Hundreds of soldiers killed by crocodiles? It sounds like fiction, like a horror movie. People who hear the story often assume it's exaggerated or invented entirely, but it's real, documented, verified by multiple sources. It happened. Even if the exact numbers are disputed, the core truth is undeniable. Japanese soldiers entered the swamps. Crocodiles killed them in large numbers. It was horrific. The of the Japanese soldiers who died on Ramree Island still seek closure. In 2019, a Japanese veterans organization requested permission from the Burmese government to conduct a memorial service on the island. Permission was granted. 40 family members traveled to Ramree. They held a Buddhist ceremony at the site of the mass graves. They prayed for the souls of the dead. They left flowers. One woman, whose grandfather had died on Ramree, said, "I needed to come here to see where he died, to understand what happened. The crocodiles took him. That's a terrible way to die. But at least now I know. Now I can mourn properly." The psychological impact on the survivors was devastating. The 20 Japanese soldiers who escaped Ramree's swamps carried trauma for the rest of their lives. Most refused the experience. When asked about the war, they'd discuss other battles, other campaigns. But not Ramree, not the swamps, not the crocodiles. The memories were too painful. One survivor, Sergeant Masao Yoshida, gave a single interview in 1979. He was 62 years old, dying from lung cancer. He decided to tell his story before death. "I dream about it every night," he said. 54 years later, I still hear the screams. I still see the crocodiles. I wake up thinking I'm back in that swamp. My wife says I scream in my sleep. She She doesn't know what I'm saying. I'm screaming in Japanese, warning my friends, telling them to run, but they're all dead. They died in 1945, and I'm still trying to save them. Yoshida described the moment he escaped the swamps. February 14, 1945. He reached the coast, collapsed on dry ground, looked back at the swamp. I thanked the Emperor for sparing me. Then I cried. I cried for 3 hours. I couldn't stop. I had survived. But why? Why me? Better men than me died in that swamp. Officers, veterans, strong men. They all died, and I lived. I've never understood why. This survivor's guilt was common. The men who escaped felt they didn't deserve survival. They believed they should have died with their comrades. Japanese military culture emphasized group cohesion. You lived together. You died together. Surviving alone was shameful. Several Ramree survivors committed suicide in the years after the war, not from PTSD, though that contributed. From shame, from the belief that survival was dishonor. The British soldiers who witnessed the attacks also suffered psychological effects. Bruce Wright, the naturalist, developed severe anxiety. He couldn't be near water, swimming pools, lakes, rivers. He'd panic, see crocodiles that weren't there. His military service ended in 1946. He returned to Britain, spent the rest of his life studying wildlife. But he avoided reptiles, couldn't work with them, couldn't even look at them without remembering Ramree. He died in 1989. His obituary mentioned his wildlife conservation work. It didn't mention Ramree Island. His family requested the omission. Wright never wanted to be remembered for witnessing horror. The Ramree Island incident influenced popular culture in unexpected ways. Several horror films drew inspiration from it. Eaten Alive at 1977 featured a crocodile killing people in a swamp. Lake Placid, 1999, featured a giant crocodile hunting humans. Rogue, 2007, featured a saltwater crocodile attacking tourists in Australia. None acknowledged Ramree Island as inspiration, but the premise was the same. Crocodiles as deliberate human hunters. This wasn't natural crocodile behavior. Except at Ramree Island, it was. Video game designers also used Ramree as inspiration. Medal of Honor Rising Sun, 2003, included a level set in Burmese swamps. Players had to avoid crocodiles while completing objectives. Far Cry 3, 2012, featured crocodile-infested swamps where players could be killed. These games introduced Ramree's story to younger generations. Many players researched the historical basis, discovered Ramree Island, learned that the fictional scenario was based on reality. In 2021, Myanmar's government proposed designating Ramree Island's swamps as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The proposal emphasized the area's ecological importance. Ramree hosts one of Southeast Asia's last pristine mangrove ecosystems. It's home to endangered species, saltwater crocodiles, Bengal tigers, Asian elephants. The UNESCO application mentioned the 1945 battle. Briefly, one paragraph. It noted, in February 1945, the island was the site of a significant World War II engagement that resulted in substantial casualties from both combat and environmental factors. Environmental factors, diplomatic language for crocodile attacks. That's the complete story of the Battle of Ramree Island. 1,000 Japanese soldiers entered the swamps. Approximately 20 emerged alive. The rest died from crocodiles, from disease, from exhaustion, from drowning, from despair. The exact breakdown will never be known. But crocodiles killed hundreds, maybe 300, maybe 600, maybe 900, enough to earn the Guinness World Record. Enough to make Ramree Island synonymous with nature's deadliest attack on humans. Enough to ensure the story is never forgotten.